Hello students, welcome back to my class. Today we are going to study one more prose piece, a prose essay on nationalism by George Orwell. George Orwell, as you know, was a renowned novelist, and his two novels that made him stand out in 20th century are The Animal Farm and 1984. Besides novel writing, he also wrote many prose essays, and as a journalist, his writings in various newspapers and magazines were eagerly waited. As a prose writer, we find his writings are mostly concerning the contemporary socio-political environment all over the world, which had passed through the two world wars and was going through the Cold War period, when the world was trying to balance between the political ideologies. Orwell always wanted to hold on to the true intellectualism, which is neither bounded by any geographical or socio-political limitations, but looked at the humanity from a universal perception. So, in his essays, we find the distinctive stamp of his clear thinking, and he writes with very simple diction, without ornamentation, without much refinement, but with a certain idea or thought. Therefore, his writings are very popular, and in spite of various animosities, various rivalries, Orwell's writings are appreciated by different groups of people. So, the present essay, where he is talking about one of the most debated idea of 20th century, that is nationalism, and he deals with this topic nationalism with an intellectualism and impartiality. In this essay, from the very beginning, he is trying to define what is nationalism. So he is telling that by nationalism, I mean first of all the habit of assuming the human beings as classified, like insects or whole blocks of millions or tens millions of people labeled as good or bad. And secondly, nationalism also deals with identifying oneself with a single nation or any unit, placing it beyond good and evil, and recognizing no other duty than advancing its interests. So, he is presenting two aspects of nationalism, and he is also making a comparison between nationalism and patriotism to do away with the confusion in the general public. And he is elaborating that nationalism is not to be confused with patriotism, because by patriotism I mean devotion to a particular place and particular way of life, which one believes to be the best in the world but has no wish to force on others. So patriotism is a love for someone's particular place, culture, society, etc., but without the aggression, without the imposition on others. But patriotism in this way is defensive, both militarily and culturally, whereas nationalism is inseparable from the desire for power. It has the strongest desire for power, and the nationalist always thinks in terms of power and prestige. And it may be a nation or maybe a unit which has chosen to sink his own individuality. So, in this way, he is not only defining nationalism but also categorically separating it from, making it distinct from patriotism, not to be confused. And then he is going on to elaborate the different characteristics of nationalism or a nationalist. And he is telling that a nationalist is one who thinks solely or mainly in terms of competitive prestige. So it is not an ordinary sense of prestige, but it is a competitive prestige. He may be positive or negative as a nationalist, that he may use his mental energy either in boosting or denigrating. But all the time he is concerned with victory or defeat, that he must be on the victorious side. But it doesn't mean that a nationalist always prefers the strongest side. The nationalist thinks that on whatever side he is, it is the strongest one. It is the impeccably civilized and powerful entity. So, he sees history, especially contemporary history, as the endless rise and decline of great power units, and every event that happens seems to him demonstration that his own side is on the upgrade and some hated rival is on the downgrade. So, the nationalist always thinks in terms of upgraded status, that his side, his unit, his loyalty is always on the upgrade, whereas the other side, the adversary, is always on downgrade. He doesn't go on the principle of simply ganging up with the strongest side. Rather, nationalism is a power hunger tempered by self deception. So, Orwell has termed nationalism as a power hungry sensibility, which is tempered with self deception. It is deceiving the self that I am on the best side, I am on the strongest side. And at the same time, it is also very offensive, imposing. It imposes on others that manufactured perception. And he is giving so many examples of the contemporary world of USA, USSR, Britain, and others to prove his point. And then he is telling that another aspect of nationalism is that as they are always deceptive in their political judgment, so also they are very partial and non-factual in their aesthetic or literary judgment. Aesthetic judgments, especially literary judgments, are often corrupted in the same way as political ones. So, their aesthetic judgment or literary judgment is also being partial or corrupt as their political or the nationalistic judgments are. And he's also telling that these people, they are just like the astrologers who can survive almost any mistake because their more devoted followers do not look to them for an appraisal of the facts. The nationalistic trend says that people are blindly loyal to the unit or to the entity. They don't go for the facts. And our writer, he is more concerned about the contemporary civilized society, and he is telling that he is disappointed that some intelligentsia, they are contributing to the development of this nationalistic rivalry or nationalistic spirit in 20th century, which is very unfortunate. And as a result, he is also analyzing what is intelligentsia. By taking the examples of G.K. Chesterton and others, he is elaborating that true intelligentsia or true people of intelligence, they don't go for confining their loyalties to any particular national boundary or the idea of a nation or unit. Therefore, he is rejecting them as jingoism. And as we know that Orwell, as a renowned adversary of imperialism and this myopic intelligentsia, he brings very impartially his thoughts with very acute analysis of each and every part of that thought. So he is presenting certain characteristics of nationalism in a broader sense. In the broader sense, he is categorizing it as obsession. First, he is telling that nationalism is an obsession. It is an obsession. As nearly as possible, no nationalist ever thinks, talks, or writes about anything except the superiority of his own power unit. So that is the obsession. And this obsession leads to the play of nomenclature. Everywhere they want to bring in the names, change of the names, as we find even today. There are people who are changing the names of the places, names of the different places of importance because they feel it is in the interest of the nationality. And not only the nomenclature, but also they are very much sensible or very much conscious about the flag, even the size of the flag, that Orwell is categorically mentioning in this essay. And the second broad characteristic of nationalism is instability. The intensity with which they are held doesn't prevent nationalist loyalties from being transferable. Therefore, he is telling the nationalists are very unstable. Unstable not in their loyalties, but unstable in their concept of the unit. So, their nationalist loyalties sometimes are transferable. And he is giving the examples of Stalin, Hitler, Napoleon, Disraeli, so on and so forth, who sometimes were also not speaking in favor of their nations. Rather, they were speaking for some groups. They were the champions of some groups within that broad nationalism. And he is also telling that transferred nationalism has been a common phenomenon among literary intellectuals. And this instability is also found among the literary intellectuals who are also transferable in their loyalty as nationalists. So, in the nationalist, in his state of mind, the object of his feeling is changeable and may be imaginary. Therefore, sometimes his feelings is changeable and it may be imaginary. And Orwell is also talking about the indifference to reality as another important characteristic of nationalism. He is telling that all nationalists have the power of not seeing resemblances between similar sets of facts, and he is giving examples from the history. That means when we look at a particular event in history, so from one side it is a revolution, and from another side it is an anarchical incident. So, from one side we are glorifying the revolutionaries, and from the other side we are condemning them as anarchists or terrorists. So, in this way, he is telling that nationalism also suffers from indifference to reality. But in reality, death, destruction, suffering of the humanity is being ignored by the nationalists. And by giving so many examples from the history, he is trying to explain this aspect. And another nationalistic characteristic he is bringing out, that is that the past can be altered. He is telling that every nationalist is haunted by the belief that the past can be altered, because the nationalist always subscribes to the idea that something had happened with his or her unit or nation by someone's aggression, someone's occupation, someone's influence. So it should be altered, because we have to go for the self-righteous approach, self-egotistic approach, that we are the best in the world, and any aberration, any influences, that should not be tolerated. Nationalism is full of intolerance. So what happens? Material facts are suppressed, dates altered, quotations removed from their context and doctored so as to change their meanings. So the nationalist always goes for these things to alter the past. Material facts suppressed, dates are altered, or quotations removed from their context. And the primary aim of propaganda is, of course, to influence contemporary opinion. And why they do that? To influence the contemporary opinion. But those who rewrite history do probably believe with part of their minds that they are actually thrusting facts into the past. But they do not know that what they are doing with history. They think that they are correcting the past. They are putting or thrusting the facts into the past. And another feature of the nationalism is indifference to objective truth. So, indifference to objective truth, which is encouraged by the sealing of one part of the world from another, which makes it harder and harder to discover what is actually happening. So, a nationalist is blind to the truth. Something is really happening, and the nationalist thinks that it is something different. It is either developing or improving his identity with the unit, or something is happening to corrode or erode the pride and ego of that unit. Therefore, Orwell is putting the nationalist into a severe category. Some nationalists are not far from schizophrenia, living quite happily amid dreams of power and conquest which have no connection with the physical world. So he is using very harsh judgment here by telling that some of them are not far from schizophrenia, the mental state where they are living quite happily amid dreams of power and conquest which have no connection with the physical world. In the physical world, they may be rotting, they may be going down, but they think the dream of their power, their glory, their golden time is coming near. So that is the fantasy world that they do live. After that, Orwell is dividing nationalism into three different categories. He is dividing them into positive nationalism, transferred nationalism, and negative nationalism. By positive nationalism, he is trying to say that in spite of all these limitations and lacuna on the part of nationalism, sometimes it does bring some good. It is good in certain aspects. So, he is putting neo-Toryism, Celtic nationalism, and Zionism in the group of positive nationalism. As we know, the neo-Toryism, the believers in the Tory ideology of English politics, that though they subscribe to a confined idea about England, but at least they are not making that idea very parochial or harmful. So he is telling all neo-Tories are anti-Russian, but sometimes the main emphasis is anti-American. The significant thing is that this school of thought seems to be gaining ground among youngish intellectuals, sometimes ex-communists, who have passed through the usual process of disillusionment and become disillusioned with that. So neo-Toryism is believing that British power and influence have declined and it has to be brought up. Celtic nationalism, it goes against the main British nationalism, but at the same time it brings the past and future greatness of the Celtic people, and as a result it contributes to the greater English nationalism. Similarly, Zionism, or that concept of supporting the struggle of the Jews, the pro-Jew approach, it is also a positive nationalism because it is trying to look at the conflict between the Palestinians and the Jews and the question of the existence of the Jews in a better sense. It is helping the Jews all around the world to be unified and to focus on their survival in different parts of Europe and America. Then coming to the second category of nationalism, transferred nationalism, he is telling that transferred nationalism is a nationalism that goes beyond the boundary of geography and culture. So communism, political Catholicism, color feeling, racial color feeling, or class feeling, or pacifism, they all are placed under the transferred nationalism. The transferred nationalism is bringing the universal approach to nationalism. It is taking out the limitation or parochialism of nationalistic idea into the universal platform. Therefore, it is a transferred nationalism. Whether it is the pacifists or the communists or the class people, class feeling, color feeling, these are all beyond the geographical, political, cultural boundaries. In negative nationalism, he places Anglophobia, anti-Semitism, and Trotskyism. As we know, Anglophobia, the phobia against the Angles, or particularly the English people, it is a negative nationalism because it is harming the broader nationalism of Britain. Similarly, anti-Semitism. Semitism means the anti-Jew feeling. It is also a negative nationalism because the Jews in different countries of Europe, they had great contribution to the rise and development of those nations. But when we discriminate against them from this narrow nationalistic point of view, it harms the broader nationalism. Therefore, he is putting it into category of negative nationalism. Similar is the Trotskyism. Trotsky, the great leader who fled to America from Russia because he was prosecuted in Russia under the Stalin. But Trotskyism, as a result, always wanted to find fault with Stalin and his regime, irrespective of any good or bad. So that is the negative nationalism Orwell is trying to clarify. And then he is telling that nationalism is one of the most important aspect of 20th century because the rise and spread of nationalism is far too big a question to be raised here. It is enough to say that in the forms in which it appears among English intellectuals, it is a distorted reflection of frightful battles. So he is telling that we can't finish talking about nationalism in just one essay. The essay is a very small place, very small platform to raise such a complex problem. So he is telling, then how we will be dealing with nationalism? He is telling, the point is that as soon as fear, hatred, jealousy, and power worship are involved, the sense of reality becomes unhinged, and that we should be conscious of about nationalism. Nationalism is not a bad thing, but nationalism must have to do away with all these things: jealousy, hatred, power worship, blindness to reality, etc., etc. And he is telling, then it is only patriotism which is an inoculation against nationalism. So it is patriotism which can save us from the harmful effects of nationalism. So he is preferring patriotism, and he is also calling himself as a patriot. He is proud of being a British patriot, but he is unhappy with the British jingoism, British imperialism, and he discards those ideas as harmful for humanity. So in the process, what we find that he is telling that the emotional urges which are inescapable and are perhaps even necessary to political action should be able to exist side by side with an acceptance of reality. So he is telling that we can't do away with nationalism. Nationalism has to stay, but it has to exist side by side with an acceptance of the reality. We have to accept the reality. If there are different people, a nation consists of diverse population We have to accept that. Diverse culture, diverse religion, diversity of thoughts, ideas. So all these things should be accommodated. And that is the true nationalism. Therefore, he is telling that nationalism on its part is suffering from first thing, power hunger, self righteousness, superiority in every aspect, number one. Number two, self deceptive, not following facts but loyalties. Number three, aesthetic and literary judgments which are biased. Obsessiveness, sensitive about nomenclature, identity, flag, etc. Sports, culture, food, climate, my thing is better, my people are beautiful, my food is best, this, so on and so forth. Instability, they frequently change and sometimes do not belong to their own country also. Sometimes they may belong to a particular thought, a particular community, and they do not belong to their nationality. Indifference to reality, historical events can be ignored for the suffering or the excellence of humanity, rather it will be judged from a very narrow idea of nationalism. Belief that past can be altered and indifference to objective truth, playing with facts or data. Nationalism plays with the facts or data. So in this way, Orwell is denouncing the acute nationalism which played havoc in the life of people in 20th century, which started in 19th century, but it played in its full-fledged form in 20th century in the form of two world wars, and after that the Cold War, which put most of the population into suffering and violence, death became the language of 20th century. So Orwell is disillusioned with this nationalism. So here, in this lesson, it is very simple because it is based on a singular thought, nationalism, but Orwell is very beautifully elaborating it into so many categories, three categories, and he is also elaborating about the different characteristics of nationalism. I hope you will be able to grasp the idea of Orwell from this, and you will do justice to your paper in the exam. Thank you.